10 a.m. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live, the Palawa people of this land, Tasmania, and recognise their continuing connection to land, skies and waters, and we pay respect to the elders past and present. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to advise you that today's council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. This means that members of the public who are unable to attend in person can still observe the proceedings. By remaining in this chamber, you are consenting to being filmed and recorded. Please be mindful of your actions and contributions as they will be displayed to the public, and thank you for your cooperation. 25.1, we have who are present. 25.1.2 is apologies, which we have two, which is Councillor Kylie Wright and Councillor Gary Barnes. 25.1.3, we have no leave of absence. And 25.1.4, we have staff in attendance. 25.2.0 is public question times. Do we have any questions from the public? Would you like to step forward, please, and state your name?
Graham Watson from Falmouth.
Good morning, Graham.
Good morning. At the last council meeting on the 20th of January, I asked some questions relating to the exhibition buildings at St Mary's. In summary of my questions and council officers' answers, it is understood the following is the situation. There are no current proposals to undertake any works on the building that would require application of the National Construction Code. But if the council decides to do so, compliance with the National Construction Code may be required. Council officers are not insisting the building must be air-conditioned. Structural repairs to the building, such as internal portal frames, although recommended by engineers in the past, have not been undertaken because of costs at the time. Alternative low-cost solutions have not been sought. Rainwater will be directed to drains away from the corners of the building when resources permit. Council officers have stated they are open to receiving professional advice about low-cost structural solutions for the building, but only if licensed practitioners provide it, and such advice should also include full life cycle analysis of future use, depreciation and ongoing maintenance, etc. Council officers say such advice is required for the elected councillors to make a fair, balanced and well-informed decision about the future of the building. But how such advice will arise is unclear. It is about this last point that I wish to ask further questions. Will the council officers now prepare a brief and seek advice from suitably qualified professional licensed structural engineers to prepare a low-cost structural solution to stabilise the existing unair-conditioned building against lateral wind loading, particularly by way of external buttress frames rather than by internal portal frames? Will the council officers, after seeking such advice, provide it to councillors before councillors are asked to make a fair, balanced and well-informed decision on the future of the building? To assist council in seeking such advice about the external buttress proposal, I have two documents which I'd like to provide to councillors and council officers for their information. The first is a draft brief for engineering advice. The second is an example solution. Hopefully both will be of interest and assistance to council. I can also inform council that I've been in contact with a licensed engineer who has experience in designing similar remedial solutions to stabilise buildings and who has had a look at the exhibition building and is interested in assisting council, and I can provide further information if council is interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to leave that there, or Jane, if you'd like to grab all of this and we'll pass it to the councillors later on.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from the members of the public?
provides an opportunity for council to provide a submission, advocating for projects, services, activities or policy changes. The closing date for submissions is Sunday, 22 December 2024. Council decision 12/24, 17.2.520, moved Councillor L. Johnson, seconded Councillor Kay Chappell. The council provided submission to the 2025-26 state budget consultation process covering the following items. 1. Relocation of St Helens District High School. 2. St Helens Wharf ownership and assessment. 3. Purpose-built early learning centre for St Mary's. 4. St Mary's Pass Alternative Route. 5. St Mary's Cornwall Trail. Question. Why did the council consult with sports groups and other users of the St Helens Sports Complex before deciding to make a submission to the state government to relocate the St Helens School to the sports complex?
Thank you very much, John. And as our normal operation, there will be a response to Todd Dudley in 7 working days. Thank you. Do we have any further questions from the public?
I mean, it's actually not a further one, it's the same one. So
Well,
I won't do it, but I just, you know, I did
If it's the
say,
same-
yeah, but I,
If
sorry.
it's the same one, if you just like to table that.
yeah, I will. And because I would just like to honour the fact that someone has asked me to ask the question, so I would like that noted that I did actually do that.
That'll be
Right.
recorded that you have handed that in.
Thank you. So I just pop, I'll do that later.
You can just,
Okay.
yeah, that'll.
Sorry, thank you.
No, thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. Do we have any further questions? Public question time, Councillor Drummond.
Thank you. I've got two questions this morning. One is from Kerry Tinker of St Mary's. Will Council please provide an update on the proposed dog park in St Mary's? It's been almost 1 year since Council put out the community consultation survey. That's that one. And the second one is a two-part question from Gary Luck of St Mary's. In reference to an email received from John Brown dated 15 July 2024, noting that the Break of Day Council had allocated funds in the 2025 budget to Ground Truth, the St Mary's to Cornwall Rail Trail. My questions are, 1, has the ground truthing been completed? And if not, when is it planned? And 2, will a report be produced and made available to the community detailing the results of this ground truthing?
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Councillor Drummond. If you would once again hand that in, and there will be a response within 7 working days.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions from the public? If we have none, we'll declare that part over and move to 25.3.0, declaration of an interest or a council or a place associate. Do we have any? We have none, thank you. 25.4.1 is a confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of January 2025. That's one to be moved. Councillor Fever, seconded Councillor Owen. If we have any comments on the minutes? We have none to take to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. 25.5.0 is council workshops which have been held since the 20th of January for your information. 25.6.0 is the planning authority and pursuant to section 25 of the local government meeting procedures regulations 2015 as the mayor informed the council that is now acting as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. Can I have somebody move? Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Chappell, all in favour? Carried unanimous. We are now acting as a planning authority. Good morning, Deb. 25.6.1 is a subdivision 11 lots plus 1 road lot. If you'd like to lead us through this one, please.
Yeah, good morning, councillors. The application is for the subdivision of 2 lots at the termination of Cabruga Drive in St Helens. The 2 existing lots are proposed to be reconfigured to create 9 residential lots, a road lot and 2 large balance lots. It's likely the 2 balance lots will undergo further reconfiguration in the future. So all lots will be able to achieve connection to stormwater, water and sewerage, Discussions have occurred with TasWater regarding the upgrading of infrastructure for water connections to service the development. The application received 3 representations and contact was made with all 3 representors. I had the opportunity to talk with 2 and I left a message for a 3rd one but didn't receive a response. The representations have been addressed within section 5 of the report and the application has been recommended for approval with conditions imposed.
Thank you very much for that. Then, can I have somebody move the officer's recommendation? Move Councillor Fever, seconded Councillor Owen. Councillor Fever, would you like to speak to this? Yes, just
Note, I support the officer's recommendation. There are 17 extensive conditions associated with this development, and it's a good thing that with a shortage of housing and land that this can go ahead.
There you go, Councillor Owen.
Fully agree there with Councillor Fever.
Thank you very much. I do not like to speak against this. Councillor Carter.
I guess it's more asking you a question. I guess I've read the documentation and firstly it seems even the appellants are quite supportive of the subdivision itself. It just seems to be some of the issues around it in terms of safety generally. So I'm just wondering, it doesn't seem to, because you've quite clearly said in your documentation that it's a matter between the appellant and the developer if there's any conversation to occur, but it seems to me, given the issues raised with the letter that came to council about child safety, is there any capacity within the Fencing Act or whatever it's called, there's something I've written down here somewhere, is there any way we can support or even require a conversation that would ensure that there's adequate fencing provided to make sure that children can't wander onto the property with dams or feral animals can't wander into the subdivision? I guess what I'm trying to say there is it could be a win-win for everybody. Is there any way we can create that conversation?
So, not that I'm aware of. As the Planning Authority, we're required to consider the application in terms of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act, as well as the planning scheme. It is a matter between 2 landowners to consider. There are no provisions within the planning scheme that does push for that. And it has been brought to the attention of the developer and through the developer to the landowner. One of the representatives that I did get to speak to, they are having discussions with the landowner. So, and that's already occurring between the 2 of them. And we really don't have provisions to require that fencing to occur.
Okay, so
And given that the site is existing at the moment as well, in close proximity to residential.
this question might not necessarily be a DA, and I apologise if it isn't, but I just have concerns about who would be responsible if, example, a child wandered onto a property and then, encountered a nasty accident. I'm not expecting you to answer it, I just raise it as a concern about who's ultimately responsible for this.
Yeah, so I don't have legal qualifications and so I won't provide an answer to that, but I do bring to the attention that there is a status quo at the moment too of the block. Yeah. And close residential uses.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carter. Councillor Johnston.
I have similar things I want to raise, and I do understand clearly that these aren't things that fall necessarily within the planning scheme. I think they are things, and maybe it is to council actually, that we need to take these things to council about these things to do with neighbours and building relationships around, things like having adequate fencing, etc. So I'm not sure, because I really don't want to put you on the spot there, but that for me just seems like to be the appropriate thing to do to somehow, and I know again it's not planning, but somehow that council, finds a way that we can help build good neighbourly relations. And one of those things, and safety, the safety issue. So I thank you for all the work you've done, and for me it was the issues that if you've raised those issues, you know, been able to talk to the actual people that put in representations, that's good. I feel quite strongly about the requirement for fencing. I think that is appropriate, and it would be great to work out how we could do that. My other question is, Taswater will update now, because I think that's something that one of the representatives raised, that they already had issues with the water supply. When does that, do you know when that happens, the sort of, you know, the updated?
Yeah, sure. So those discussions between Taswater and the applicant regarding the upgrade of Taswater facilities all happens separately outside of our discussions with them. However, what has to happen prior to the sealing of the plan is we have to ensure that all the conditions are met, and one of those conditions is the connection to the Taswater water infrastructure. So at that time we'll receive certification from Taswater that the upgrade has occurred, and we don't seal the plan until such time as we get that certification. Yeah. So there's a lot of engineering.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you for that.
Councillor Drum.
Thank you, through the chair. Similar issues, like the,
Oh, sorry,
again,
just me.
I acknowledge that it's the Boundary Fence Act 1908, we can't do anything. But we do see so much conflict in our community around boundary fences. I'm just wondering, is there some way that we can address that within council, if that means making a recommendation, you know, as an amendment to the planning scheme? I don't know. My concern is around two issues: the potential movement of invasive species out from the rural land into the subdivision, potentially causing damage of that newly subdivided area, and two, going the other way, children and others into the rural property and the risks that might involve, considering dams and other infrastructure. And I know you've addressed that, so I have similar concerns to my fellow councillors, just around what we can do to make that a more adequate outcome for all parties, to have safety in regard to their property boundaries. So I do thank you for the work you put in. I do have one other question, and that was in relation to page 24, where we're talking about clearance within a priority vegetation area. And I see that in the report you've cited that the lot has been essentially and historically cleared of all vegetation. However, there were some small isolated vegetation. So if the land clearing has occurred, did that occur with permission? Is that a relevant?
This is quite historic, this clearing of land, and my thoughts on it is that it has been managed for bushfire because of its proximity to the GenRes zone. That's only my thoughts on it. As for, you know, the reason why it was cleared, but you can see also the planning scheme allows for clearance in the general residential zone to allow for residential development. So even though it had historical clearing, it would have met the requirements in the Natural Assets Code to clear the land.
Where there's a priority vegetation though, don't we have an obligation to maintain that vegetation within a residential?
Well, the GenRes zone has different requirements because it is there for residential use. But just on the matter of the safety issues, you can see that there are two very large balance lots left, and we are yet to see a design for that, and that might be a time to discuss with the developers how that interface with the zone transition occurs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Like I say, I visited the site yesterday, didn't see any inherent dangers at all. I thought it was quite flat and it was a great spot for a subdivision. And sitting there in the car, the only thing I thought is it would probably be a bit windy, but there were no dangers that I could see.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Cleveland. We have no further comments. If not, I'm going to take this to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous. Thank you. 25.6.2 is residential lot 2 subdivision. Would you like to talk us through this one, please?
Yes, so this development application, it's for a two-lot subdivision within the general residential zone at 7 Grant Street in St Helens. It's going to reconfigure the existing residential lot, which has a land area of approximately 1,620 square metres, and it's going to reconfigure it to include an internal lot to occur behind the existing dwelling. Proposed Lot 1 fronting Grant Street and containing the existing dwelling will have a land area of approximately 529 square metres. Proposed Lot 2 will have a land area of approximately just over 1,000 square metres, and both lots are able to connect to sewer, water and stormwater infrastructure. The site is affected by Council's flood mapping. The application received one representation, but this was mainly concerned about how the proposed subdivision could assist sewer connection difficulties with the adjacent land. The matter was discussed with the representor, and I have included that discussion within section 5 of the report. The development proposal is recommended to be approved with conditions that address some of the challenges of reconfiguring this lot, and I'll just bring your attention to two of those. It's required to provide a flood hazard report to demonstrate how proposed Lot 2 is able to achieve a tolerable risk for future development, as well as how development on Lot 2 may impact adjacent sites, how that overland flow will be managed. I've also requested survey confirmation on the width of the access handle, and that's because we do need that 3 metre through the access handle there. And because of the way subdivision occurs, and this is mainly for the information of councillors, is that all of that survey work happens before the sealing of the plan. So that'll be our opportunity to make sure that that occurs and complies with that condition. So the detailed survey work usually happens in that engineering phase of reconfiguring a lot. Okay? So those conditions are there and they'll be checked at the time of when they present for sealing of the plan.
Thank you very much for that. Can I have somebody move the opposite recommendation? Councillor Carter, seconded Councillor Chapel. Councillor Carter, would you like to make any comment?
No, I think it's a very sound proposal. I will have a question in a moment, but yeah, I think it's worthy of support.
Thank you, Councillor Chapel.
I just think this is a really good example of how we can start to infill these spaces within the town centre before we start spreading out. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open this up. Anybody got questions or that they'd like to ask of Deb? Councillor Carter.
Thank you. You just explained in the last part of your speech there, in the sense that I was concerned about the width of the access and making comment in your report about emergency services and access. It seems that you were quite satisfied, but I guess that was the only thing from this proposal that I was a little bit concerned about, and I think you explained that there'd be fairly careful scrutiny around it.
It was referred to our Works Department in terms of the access as well, so we've met what the requirements are there. It is something we will have further discussion on internally too in the interpretation of different sections of the Parking and Sustainable Transport Code, and we've put the condition on to make sure we've got that width before we seal the plan.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson, do you have your hand up?
No, sorry, I was chewing my pen.
Just one question. Whilst it's related pertinent to this development, it's a very general question. It follows up on what Councillor Chapel was saying. So this is within the new planning scheme. This is a new facility, whatever the correct word is. But this is a new thing for us that we can actually do these blocks. That's wonderful.
Internal lots.
The internal lots. I think that's a fantastic development forward. As Councillor Chapel said, we need that housing and to be able to start building those, making use of those blocks within the already built up areas before we extend further town boundaries. I think that's a really positive development to come out of the new planning scheme.
Yeah,
So thank you.
consolidation is important, but it does need to be done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. It's interesting.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments? If not, I'll take this one to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Mayor
Thanks,
now
Dad.
advises the council has concluded its meetings of planning authority under section 25 of the local government meeting procedures regulation 2015. 25.7.1 of the outstanding matters.
page 257, it was a motion that Deputy Mayor Chappell asked some time ago around a policy for planting in our communities, and it says that a draft policy has been reviewed by management team and Councillor Chappell. I'm just wondering when we might be seeing that document come to council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd need to check with infrastructure and health services on that, whether it is in, I believe. Yeah, I'll need to check with those on that.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Oh, it's just on page 253, just wondering if there's any update on the lease arrangement in the front garden of the old hospital site, St Helens. I know that we had some follow-up contact late last year. I know it's only February, but I just wondered if there was any further movement on that.
Through Mr. Mayor, there's a post council item regarding the old
Oh,
hospital.
sorry.
So, we can deal with it there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Mayor.
Two on there.
I'm wondering if the General Manager can give us any update on the Online Access Centre interactions with the state government, because on the 8th of the 10th, 24, they were asked for some sort of response.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Carter. State government. So we've made numerous contacts with the state government regarding involvement in the engagement process and assurances we will be involved. And late last week, they advised the report had been finalised and it was administered. And we haven't been contacted. So we asked for proof of that. They gave us an email on the 17th of October. And we asked for the original, so we could check the metadata, because we didn't have it in our system. And it's not there. So I had a bit of a dust up with the state government representative last week on this matter, and expressed our frustration, a few other words, at their failure of the consultants to actually contact the council to make reasonable efforts to do it. In addition to that, they said they had a survey response to the council on this, which says, and I've got a copy of that, it says, the question is, I'm answering this survey as, and it's as a provider or support worker helping clients or community members with the internet or technology. That's not a response from council officers or anyone who the file. Some reasons being attributed to the council, and I've asked that that be corrected in the report because that is wrong. So, incredibly frustrated, the executive director, or acting executive director, has advised to be in the area at some stage, and he is more than willing to work with council. And I said, we'll take up that offer.
And also, Councillor Carter, as you're aware, as Mayor and as GM, we've pushed the state government, several ministers, over this issue, and it would seem extremely inappropriate that they are considering information and using it that has reportedly come from council when it hasn't. We're not very impressed with the easiest way of saying it. And when the General Manager gets the opportunity to sit and talk to the person in government on this, there'll be a few more sparks flying, I'm sure, because we've worked our arse off trying to get information from the government on how this new model is going to look like and have input into this new model, and it would appear like we've been totally sidelined out of it.
So, in addition to the General Manager's report then, I would be extremely concerned that not only the council hasn't been consulted with appropriately, but neither is the community. So I have no awareness of anybody within the community who's been asked any of this stuff at all.
It's interesting when you look at the survey that went out to the community, and it was about digital inclusion. It mentions nothing about review of online access centres. It was about digital inclusion. It was
disappointing in the stream. I share that concern.
Councillor Johnston.
Sorry, I did have two others. That was one of them, so thank you, and thank you. The other one was the one just before that, St Helens Sport Complex, but under that, the update, a draft brief has been developed in this project. The project will now be incorporated into the St Helens and Binalong Bay livability strategy. Can I get some more information at some point, and excuse me if I'm not up to date with it, but the St Helens and Binalong Bay livability strategy, if that would be okay.
Mayor, that's listed as an item for the special council workshop next Monday.
Thank you. So it was good I asked the question, maybe. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry, one more. Sorry, I apologise.
That's okay, Councillor Johnston.
It's about the freshwater resources and water quality. I've just got a question around if we can, and I don't know if we can get a briefing from Taswater at some stage. I feel like Taswater is an important sort of group that we should be talking to about our water quality management, etc. So maybe I should bring this up at a workshop, but it would be good if we could have.
No, so
Freshwater resources and water quality management issues.
Something to do with Tasmania, Councillor Johnston.
Okay. Tasmanian government agencies and bodies.
yeah, not Taswater, but that might be Taswater, so
Okay.
I'll talk to the NRM coordinator about that.
Yeah, okay.
That was a question, I think, raised by Howard Jones from the NRM committee originally and brought forward by Polly. That's my understanding. It was Howard talking about river quality and Georges Bay and all of that.
I'll follow up with the NRM coordinator on that.
Thank you. If we have no further questions, we'll move on. 25.8.0 petitions, which we have nil. 25.9.0, there is notice of motions, we have nil. 25.10.0, councillors' questions on notice, we have nil. 25.11.0, questions, councillors' questions without notice. Do we have any? Councillor Carter.
Big day from there, isn't it? I have three. First one, the council is currently reviewing the development application DA 234-2024, utilities telecommunication facility 14 Bum Street, St Helens, for a 26.3 megawatt communications tower proposed for the centre of St Helens. Given the tower's height and location in the heart of the town, some of the community may have concerns about its visual impact, suitability and how well it aligns with the character and ambience of the St Helens area. So beyond the standard of the DA process, what steps is council taking to ensure this development is in keeping with the community expectations and does not detract from the town's aesthetic and atmosphere? Are there any additional measures being considered, such as community consultation, design modifications or visual impact assessments to balance improved connectivity with maintaining St Helens' unique charm as a place to live and as a major tourist destination? That's my question one. Proceed.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The Bay of Fires has just won Australia's #1 beach award. Given that visitation will expand further as a result, can council activate all relevant agencies to undertake necessary action to, 1, improve the beach access exampled by the washed out steps adjacent to the cafe, 2, remove from path and road verges all weeds, particularly blackberries, and revegetate with native species? This issue is also relevant on the roads leading into the Bay of Fires. Number 3, clear designated walking tracks of fallen trees and obstructing vegetation and leave that debris adjacent to improve the habitat. And number 4, provide adequate amenity at all sectors of the Bay of Fires with particular attention to providing toilets at the Gardens Junction. It will be important that effort occurs prior to next peak season and therefore precede the Bay of Fires Master Plan activation and the livability study, given the popularity that attraction will receive. And finally, with the recent passing of Sandy von Stiglitz, and there are efforts underway to publicly acknowledge Sandy's contribution. But now that this matter is operating minimally through the generosity of the council site staff, can council provide basic amenity, power and water to the shed and work with identified local volunteers to re-establish this vital community asset? The initiative could be a potential funding source for local projects. I'll submit those questions.
Thank you very much. Any further questions without notice? Councillor Johnston?
My question without notice is, at the January council meeting, Graham Motham asked about the need for air conditioning in the exhibition building, and the response from council staff was that council is not insisting that air conditioning must now be installed. On a further question, council was asked if it was prepared to seek alternative low-cost structural solutions to ensure the stability and integrity of the building without the requirement that the building must be air conditioned. Council staff indicated that councillors will need not only to consider a low-cost structural solution, but also the full life cycle costing in order to make their decision about the future of the St Mary's exhibition building. Accordingly, my question is to the General Manager is, will the General Manager, as a first step, ask council staff to engage Tasmanian licensed engineers to provide a low-cost structural solution for St Mary's exhibition building to solve the lateral bracing problem? And I'll hand that up.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further? Councillor Drummond?
Following some recent discussions with a Bennelong Bay resident, I would like to ask the following two questions. I ask these questions whilst being aware that the management of the Bennelong Bay foreshore area is a collaborative effort between the Break of Day Council and Tasmanian Parks and Wildlife Service, and also acknowledging that these issues were previously identified in the Bennelong Bay Foreshore Master Plan of January 2014 under the Issues and Opportunities section, which was item 2.45. Question 1, what actions can the council take to address the overgrown vegetation and fuel load along the Bennelong foreshore, given the significant bushfire risk and lack of an escape route for residents? And 2, how can the council improve accessibility to the foreshore and beaches whilst ensuring proper maintenance of pathways, signage and public facilities to enhance both visitor experience and environmental sustainability? Thank you.
We'll have those in. Do we have any further questions without notice from our councillors? We have none. We shall move on to the nearest correspondence on 25.4.1, and there is an error there. They got on the 10th of the 2nd that I was a part of the Aquatic Committee Working Group meeting. I actually wasn't there. That there's a mistake that's been put into the thing. And also yesterday I was in Launceston with the Minister Felix Ellis doing the review that's not recorded. 25.12.2 is councillors' reports for the period ending 17th of February. Friday Chamber of Commerce. Deputy Mayor, Christian.
Okay, our next meeting will be Tuesday, the 4th of March, and start at 6 p.m.
Yep, thank you. NRM Special Committee, Councillor Drummond.
We had a meeting on the 4th of February. I asked Councillor Johnson to chair the meeting for me, as I was even worse sounding than I am today and had not much of a voice, so I thank Councillor Johnson for taking on that role. We talked about invasive species being really important, the deer in particular, the appointment of our members, the reconciliation plan, the NRM emergency preparedness, response and recovery plan, Bay of Fires master plan, weed management, the Angassi oysters, and then we had updates from our members. So thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Please go through with Councillor Faber.
Sorry, could I just add to that? Thank you for that update. I just would like the council and the broader people watching it. It was a full meeting. It was good to see that we had 2 people from Parks, so it was well represented. This is a special council committee that meets 3 times a year. They go for a very long time. We have our expert there, who is Polly, But because of resources, he not only has to participate, he's also taking notes. Now, this is probably not the place to ask the question, and I can do it at another point, but I would like to raise the fact that I think it would be good if we could have support from another council staff member to take notes and minutes to allow the full participation of our expert.
I'll get you to bring that up at another point.
Okay.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Drummond.
That is something that the General Manager and I started talking about late last year and is ongoing, as to try and resolve that situation of resources within council and giving that. So it is actually happening. It's just that it's taking a little bit of time. So, but yeah,
Thank you.
that's just an update. Thank you, Liz.
Our East Coast Tourism meeting is next Monday, so I'll have an extensive report after that.
Thank you. And members on Hampshire Crew? Nothing. Access Inclusion Advisory Committee, Councillor Drummond.
We had a meeting on the 12th of February. The items we looked at were the action plan, the carers report, the International Days of Disability events. We had 2 of those in December. The Live You Life You Please film, and the fact that we're hoping to show that again in the community. It's been so well received. It's been a fantastic thing. That's a film for those who don't know about end-of-life decisions and preparing for end-of-life. We've had a good showing in the St Mary's Hall, and we've been asked to go to the hospital and show it to a group of people there at the day centre as well. We also had member updates, and we talked about cultural inclusivity. So, for another big meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Firefighters Master Plan Steering Committee, Councillor Carter.
Thank you. There's been no recent meeting, but the community development on page 295 offers a report in terms of the status of that work. It is important to note that the online access survey has closed, but there's still a possibility that the community can access and provide information or input through the website, so consultation can continue through that medium.
Thank you. 25.13.1 is the Corporate Services Department report. Good morning, Ralph.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, councillors.
Good morning.
Where do we start?
I think we start on Corporate Services Department report, Mayor, and it's presented as written, councillors. I've made a few notes there under the officer's report relating to the third rates instalment falls due on the 28th of February. Those rates notices have been out for a week or 2 now, and we're already starting to get some come in. I've also noted there the Valuer General municipal revaluation process. As you'd all be aware, every 6 years, the municipality goes through a full reevaluation of all of our properties. That is quite a detailed tender process, and I'm currently working with Valuer General and the Tender Assessment Committee to find a preferred tenderer. I'll provide a bit more detail there in the report, which I won't go through too much today. And our investment portfolio is listed there, councillors, for you to see. You will note that interest rates are starting to come off their highs at the moment, and our approach to investing with that laddered approach of a term deposit maturing every month may actually move to sort of a slightly longer time frame in the time ahead to try and take advantage of higher interest rates. But I have more for that for you in a workshop coming up. And the rate summary is provided there as well, and that is fairly much as normal. So any questions, Mayor, to the report?
Thank you. Can I somebody move the report we received? Councillor Chapman, second Councillor Old. Any questions to Ralph on the report? Okay, I'll take it to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. 25.13.2 is the monthly financial report. And Ralph, would you like to walk through this one with us, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, the profit and loss statements, the balance sheet, the statement of cash flows and the capital works report for the year are all provided there for you as they are every month. There's a few things worth noting there in the profit and loss statement. And this has been a recurring theme for the last couple of months, that operating grants are down some 50% on budget. That primarily relates to us receiving the 24-25 financial assistance grants in the prior financial year, so that's nothing to be overly concerned about. As I said, interest and investment income, as you saw in the previous item, is performing very well. It's about $92,000 over what we projected at this time of the year, which is a pretty good outcome in a market which, as I say, is falling. Capital grants are down 641,000. Sorry, they're higher, 641,000 higher than budget, and that's due to grants being carried forward from the prior year. Our materials and services are 15% down on budget. That primarily relates to the timing of some payments and the progress of some of the projects themselves. As far as the balance sheet's concerned, there's nothing really overly significant to point out there, and the statement of cash flows is fairly normal. Capital Works program, everything's listed there for councillors to see. And Mayor, I think with that, if there's any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Ralph. Somebody moved the financial report. Councillor Fever, second Councillor Carter. Any questions to Ralph on the report? Ralph, I would like just to make a comment. It's really important that we keep recognising the financial assistance grants being paid in the previous year and how you're carrying that forward and keeping that methodology rolling forward. It makes what you're doing with profit and loss so much easier to understand, and hopefully the federal government may actually give us that money as they said they were going to originally as a stimulus, and actually pay at the end of the year that it's due, so we don't have these complicated carry-ons every year.
Yeah, that's a very...
Hopefully that may change, we'll just see.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Mayor. And it really does, as you're pointing out, it skews the financials quite significantly. And that's why I bring it up every month, because it's money we've received in advance, and really we need to go back to the way it should be. So the financials read the way they're meant to.
I just wanted to thank you for doing that. It makes it very simple for people to understand.
And I'd just like to reiterate that thank you, because you say not to worry too much about it. So we don't have to worry anymore about it.
Never worry about it. There's nothing to worry about.
No, but thank you for explaining it, because I'm not so literate in this area, so it is important for us.
If we have no further questions, I'm going to take this to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. 25.13.3 is the Visitor Information Centre report. Ralph, how do you do?
As we get the support every month from the staff of the Visitor Information Centre and the History Room, I really don't have anything major to point out there. I think if councillors have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Somebody moved the Councillor Johnson and seconded Councillor Drummond. Any questions to Ralph on this? Councillor Johnson?
It's not so much a question, but it is interesting about walking tracks and walking, and so I think some of the things that we've raised around the fires and things like that, it is really something that people come to this area for, which is walking.
Yeah.
So that's just a note of interest for me.
If we have no
Sure.
further questions, I'll take this to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. 25.13.4, Capital Works Budget Review. Over to you, Ralph.
Thanks, Mayor. Councillors, it's fairly standard practice for us to undertake a budget review half yearly. Sometimes it's the operating budget and the capital budget. The operating budget this year, I think, looks pretty much on track. But with the capital budget, there's often a number of revisions that you want to make, because the capital budget really spreads over a couple of years. and we've put forward some revisions to it to capture where we need some extra money or where we need to reallocate some funds. All those reallocations and changes are highlighted within the budget review document that you have in yellow. We did discuss this at the workshop, so Mayor, really so to the councillors if they have any questions.
Thank you very much. And I first have the report we received. Councillor Johnson, second. Councillor Chapel. Any questions on this one, please? Councillor Drummond.
No.
Councillor, I'm happy to, but it wasn't
Oh,
me.
I put your hand up, sorry, councillor.
I actually put my hand up for moving the report be accepted.
That's what I just asked. You moved it. Councillor Chapman seconded it.
You said Johnson.
Oh, did I? I do apologise.
I mean, we precisely. It's the glasses.
Okay, councillor Drummond, you have a question?
Yes, please. On page 277, could you tell me a little bit more about the CCTV cameras, please, Raoul, and where they will be placed? And was there an external funding that we got? Or was there?
There's no external funding
All right,
for that one.
great, thank you.
The CCTV cameras, as I recall, John, were for the works depot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we've had a few break-ins at the works depot, so we're doing an upgrade on that one, but also at the waste transfer.
Yeah, I was
station
wondering,
So we're working on that one as well to do an upgrade.
because there've been quite a few break-ins there recently, haven't there?
Well, it's more to do with as a result of the illegal dumping of asbestos at the site.
Oh,
So that was one of the other reasons for it. So
thank
get
you.
a better control of the system there as well.
Thank you. I also have a question. Oh yeah, I know. I was going to ask on page 278, do we have any further information on the Fingal Youth Playground Recreation Hub in regard, again, unfortunately, to the asbestos that was found there and what the costs that might incur for that build there?
All I can say at the moment is that the asbestos management team that have been there cleared the site on Friday, and I'll have a much better understanding of the costs associated with that probably mid this week. But the site has been cleared by the hygienists. They primarily found one piece of asbestos, but it had a major impact on the whole project.
I've got one other question, and I had this question written before I received the question from the public. So I was just going to ask about the St Mary's Dog Park. We've got $20,000 in the budget. Do we anticipate that being spent this year, was my question.
That's probably one for the works manager.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Drummond, I don't know the status of that project, sorry.
Any further questions? Councillor Beaver.
Thanks, Raoul.
That's okay.
On page 278, Raoul, just in relation to the pump track, the budget estimate was 150,000, then a revised one of 496 with a $346,000 change in the budget.
I think we discussed this at the workshop, that was a timing matter of how it crossed over from one year to the other. So the total budget for that project was 500,000, and
That was also state government commitment at 500. The state government, we got 500,000 from the state government's election commitment originally for that.
Thank you.
I think it's just good to discuss things like that, because if you're an average ratepayer looking at this, you're going to think they came in 349,000 over budget. But when you hear that explanation, then it's correct. So that's what we need to be giving people.
yeah, no, it's the way it's written there. Without that knowledge, you'd think it was well over budget, but no, it came in pretty much right on budget, and it's just simply the way the carry forwards work from one year to another.
Any questions to Raoul? If we have no further questions, I'll take this to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimously. We're going to stop right there. And
Thanks, Raoul.
we'll have a short break. And we have
that, straight after that, there'll be a slight pause and we'll be onto the bridge at Lower Germantown Road in April and May. Up there, we're just waiting for bushfire season to sort of pass, so there's less risk there without a bridge if people need to get in and out of that area. Waste management, it's not in the report, that's a failing of my part. Earlier in February, we had some illegal asbestos dumping at St Helens Waste Transfer Station. The asbestos was hidden in a truckload of concrete that was tipped. We found that asbestos. We had to notify workplace standards. We had to get the asbestos removalists in. That was taken care of. And as an upshot of that, we're upgrading our camera surveillance around being able to look in the top of trucks and things like that where we can't see now. We have a hazardous household collection service coming up again in long weekend in March. Last one that happened 6 months ago was quite successful, so we're expecting to have the same success this time. There'll be some advertisements and some information about that coming over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much for that.
Excuse me.
Somebody move the officer's report. Councillor Lefevre, seconded Councillor Carter. Any questions to David on the report, please? Councillor Johnston.
It's not actually on the report, it is about the report that we get monthly. I'm wondering if there's, because it's about, under Works Operations General, it's about works that have happened in the previous month. I'm wondering, and forgive me my ignorance, if there is the opportunity to be provided with a more forward-looking report, in particular around towns and parks and that sort of maintenance. Just is there a, you know, where it's being done, just that sort of thing, basically.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, thank you.
Any further questions? If there's no questions, I'll take this to the vote. All in favour?
Carried unanimous, thank you. 25.14.2 is the animal control report that was discussed in workshop. David, have you got any further comments? Or just as received?
Pretty much we continue to work on the receiving money from unregistered dogs. That's a lot harder than saying it, but we keep at it.
No worries, thank you, David.
Have somebody move that the report be received? Councillor Chappell, seconded Councillor Carter. I'll take this one straight to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. 25.14.3, the Tasman Highway St Helens speed limits. David, would you like to talk us through this one, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillors. As indicated in this report, the purpose of the report is to have a response received from the department in relation to two areas on the Tasman Highway. The first one is south from the bridge to St Helens Point Road, and the latter one is north of Warren's Way. In terms of Warren's Way, the department sees that there's merit in reducing the speed limit out to 60. The extent of that is to be defined, but the department will follow up on that matter. That's been a long-standing matter with the department for at least 3 years, so it's good to see some potential action happening there. In relation to the section of road around the Jules Bay, State Growth were taking a position that they view the current 60km speed limit as being adequate, and at this point in time, there's no commitment from them to look at reducing that. In saying that, it's always open with the department to receive broader community positional standpoint on that matter, and it's something that can be considered going forward. But at this point in time, this purpose is just to let you know the correspondence that we've received in relation to both those matters.
Thank you very much, Dave. Can I have somebody move that the report be received
Have we got any comments to this report, please? Councillor Fever.
I'd like to speak about the issue of the Golden Fleece to St Helens Point Road. I've had two vastly different experiences with state growth recently. One was the school bus issue at Scamander, where their decision was very much common sense and it was speedy, and I thank them for this. This latest ruling on the Golden Fleece to St Helens Point Road, us wanting a reduction, I believe smacks of laziness in them not wanting to investigate the issue, and it's a lack of interest, and I can only assume that's a different bureaucrat than the one that looked at the school bus issue. As we all know, the traffic and variety and size of vehicles has increased immeasurably in recent years around the St Helens Township. No longer can you easily drive south across the bridge and turn into Medea's Cove, Jason Street, Laurie Heights, Atlas Drive, Falmouth Street and Poseidon Streets. The normal pattern is, and I'm one of those drivers that has to go up the hill, is that you have to wait for oncoming traffic to pass, and then you're basically closing your eyes, not wanting to be hit from behind. At Laurie Heights, you've got the award-winning Big Four Caravan Park, and their clientele trying to cross the road with their bikes, numerous families, they're wanting to access the walking riding track. You've got bike riders wanting to use it and also to cross over at the Lions Park to access the mountain bike trails. You've got school children who live on the hill trying to access the track to walk to school, and in recent times I've noted very few of those, so I imagine it's too dangerous and their parents are actually taking them by car. To me, this is a really big issue, and common sense and community orientated decision is needed. And I've spoken to 26 people in the last week about this, and 25 of them are in favour of the reduction from 60 to 50, and have said it's a no-brainer, and they brought us specific reasons why, including trucks crossing the white line, people not being able to navigate their way around the bay. And I've had one person against, and he was a rev head.
Look, on that note, the rev head note, we'll leave it right there from you, Councillor Fever, and I'll go to Councillor Carter and then Councillor Chapman.
I don't think I need to say much more than what Councillor Fever's done, but I just want to reiterate that exactly the sentiment that he's expressing is something we need to not let the state government back away from.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, through the chair. I've got 2 points that I'd like to talk about today, and I am going to reiterate my point. Firstly, I'd like to express my appreciation for Straight Growth for responding to our request to lower that speed limit on the Tasman Highway between Warrens Way and Bayloo Street here in St Helens. This section of the industrial area experiences significant heavy vehicle traffic both into Warrens Way and to the businesses adjacent to the highway. And whilst there has not yet been a fatality or serious incident, smaller incidents frequently do occur to speeding vehicles failing to give way to emerging traffic or attempting to overtake turning trucks, leading to near misses and vehicle damage. I first brought this motion to Council during my initial term, and I'm grateful with the work with David and that we've been able to achieve a positive outcome with that speed limit reduction. Which leads me to my second point, and that is the continued failure of state growth to address the serious dangers on that Tasman Highway between St Helens Point Road turnoff and the Golden Fleece Bridge. This section of road is notorious for accidents due to blind spots at both ends of Atlas Drive and insufficient line of sight distances for Falmouth Street, Jason Street, Percy Street, Laurie Heights and Medea Cove Road. This area not only serves our permanent residents and local businesses, but also sees a significant number of holiday visitors accessing accommodation, many of whom are unaware of the dangers posed by this stretch of road. Tragically, our community did lose one of its own just last year, and it is incomprehensible that state growth refuses to consider a speed limit reduction to prevent further loss of life. And the simplest and most immediate solution is to reduce that speed limit from 60 to 50, and I urge our community to support the Council in continuing to push for this change, and I would like Council to actually invite the Minister and those that make these decisions to actually visit this stretch of road as a pedestrian, make them cross the road, and then as a road user. to get a better understanding of the issues as a matter of urgency.
Well done, Councillor Campbell. I think you've actually highlighted an awful lot with Councillor Feed and Councillor Carter, what the concerns are. Councillor Johnson, you had your hand up.
I did, and thank you all for what you put forward. And I'm particularly interested with what Barry's, everything, but I'm interested in the fact that, you know, of the 26 people, 25 people, our community, are saying this is a problem. I hear what we say, that, you know, state growth in this situation has potentially been lazy in its decision, and maybe we shouldn't be putting this onto council. We can do letters and things like that. But I am wondering if there is a way that council can get feedback from our community. I know we're doing the work for state growth here, but because it is urgent, and I hear what you've also said, if we can get the minister up here, but I'm wondering if this is an important sort of issue for us to take a lead in getting responses from the community so that we can indeed take this to state growth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Johnson. Councillor Holden.
Yeah, I fully support whatever other councillors have said in regard to the development point to the Golden Fleece Bridge. Like with the amount of traffic and the volume and the size and everything, and if they are not going to consider changing the speed limit, we should push further for an upgrade.
Thank you very much. Councillor Drummond.
Fully supportive of everything that's been said. I'm just wondering if there's something, I don't mean this to be, but as simple as a survey monkey or something that we can send to our community and ask them to fill that in, and then collect the data from that and use that as supporting evidence, because I do think this is a really important thing. And I'm just thinking about how to do it quickly so that we get a fast result. And survey monkey might be one of those things. I know that James had quite good responses to that for the survey in the past, and this might be a really good case to utilise that survey.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Drummond, and I'd personally like to thank every councillor around the table for their commitments and comments on what we all believe is a pretty serious issue. I find it quite ludicrous that we all have to have a car that is safe to drive on a road, but we don't have to have a road safe to drive on. And the road from the Lions Park to the Golden Fleece Bridge is a substandard road in my opinion, but it is a continuation of the Canara to St Helens Goat Track that we're accustomed to. The problem with the Golden Fleece Bridge moving south, we see the decline of the road always slips away, and it's always been constantly upgraded, and we need to consider the actual status of the road and what the infrastructure needs to be done to make that a safe road so that it doesn't continually to collapse as it is. If you want to continue to drive it at 60 k's, the road should be upgraded to be at least contemporary and a safe road to drive on, and at the moment, in my opinion, it's not. Councillor Fever.
Just by way of interest for state growth, of those people that I've discussed this with, several of them brought up Avoca and said, for an extended period, both sides of Avoca, it's 50 kilometres, a hugely wide road, a handful of people there, yet we have 60 k's on a goat track, as you describe, with numerous, you know, road users trying to turn off, children trying to get across the road. So how do you reconcile that?
Councillor Drummond.
Something I forgot to explain, we have done some work with Sarah, and they've had success, to my understanding, in getting reductions in speed limits in other areas. I'm wondering, is there anything that they can do for us and work with us in that regard too? This is a dangerous piece of road. It's really not up to standard, and we need to do something for it.
Thank you very much for that comment, Councillor Drummond, and I'll leave that to our GM and our Works Manager. Whereas we are a member of Sarah, our council, and if there's any leverage that we can get, I think we need to exercise that, because this is something that is extremely important to us, the safety of our community. If we have no further comments, I'll round it up. I think everybody's made some very pertinent points, and I thank everybody for that. And I'll take this to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous. Thank you. Good morning, Chris. 25.15.1 is the Community Services Report. And Chris, would you like to walk us through this one, please?
Thank you, Nick. Can I just provide you some additional updates just on some of the projects that I've listed that have come since the agenda item was done? We've received, as of last Friday, 325 surveys, which in terms that we all know is a really good response in initial start of the Bay of Fires master plan collection of data. I haven't got a final number of the comments, but because that's still running and it's still open. But I've also sent in some additional surveys this morning as well, so that number will increase. The expression of interest for 29 Talbot Street, that is open. And you may remember from the agenda item that we did in 2024, offering the garage to the SES, they've now taken up and have moved their vehicle in as of last Friday. And the management plan for the Hub for Health, I've actually got a draft copy this morning, so I'll be bringing that to the council workshop in March.
Thank you very much. Somebody move the council recommendation, Councillor Chapel and seconded Councillor Fever. Any comments or questions to our Community Services Manager? Councillor Drummond.
Chris actually has answered already most of my questions. That's lovely. Thank you for reading my mind. I was just wondering in regard to the reconciliation action plan. I see there's an upcoming presentation to councillors at the April workshop. I'm just really grateful to see that because I unfortunately missed the initial workshop. So I'll be really happy to see how that's progressing. So thank you for that.
Just to update, through you, Mayor, to update councillors, we actually have a workshop tomorrow for staff where we're actually working on the draft plan. So that will come along with the outcomes report as well. So I'll actually forward you the outcomes report prior to the workshop and then we'll discuss the draft at the workshop.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Johnston.
It's just a clarification. So what you'll forward to us will be the draft and the...
No. So I'll forward to you prior to the workshop is the outcomes report, which is a summary of the workshops that we've done. So that gives you some good background behind how we've got to where we have. The draft report, or the draft plan, a lot of that has some things that we have to include from Reconciliation Australia. And there's a few things that we've added as well, which have come out of that outcomes report, which I'll forward to you prior to the workshop, yeah.
Okay, and then we'll see the draft at the workshop.
Correct, yeah. And it is a couple of hours, and it is after the workshop is finished in April, yeah. It's in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take this and vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. 25 to 16.1 is the Development Services Report. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, everybody.
Jake, would you like to give us any updates, please?
I just to inform council that our website crashed on Friday and it's back up and running now, so some of the advertising material wasn't available until just this morning. So for those few applications that were advertised, we'll give those applications a couple of extra days after the 14-day period, just a bit of grace because the website was down. And Falmouth Toilet, getting lots of engagement with the community, which is really good, and we've got our on-site consultation happening on Wednesday night there in Falmouth. So, yeah, getting some good engagement there, which is good to see. Happy to take any other questions.
Can I have somebody move the report be received? Councillor Oldham, seconded Councillor Fever. Any questions to Jake on the Development Services Report? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Jake, for that, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Sure. So you said that there was a good engagement, so that's through
Through the online survey.
Through the online survey?
Yeah.
Okay. And then with the consultation on Wednesday afternoon, evening. Yeah, evening. Will there be an opportunity for a bit of a Q&A in that? So how will you be running that session?
Yeah,
I suppose my question is. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, through you, Mayor.
I'm getting a lot of questions.
Yeah, the intention will obviously just be to probably just go through the information that's already available, so just to talk through that so that everybody understands the pros and cons of each site.
Yes.
And then yeah, effectively open it up to the floor, whether it's, a bit of a one-on-one type of thing. I guess it depends on the numbers that turn up. I don't think there's a lot of indication, but if there's a few numbers, then, we get a few sets of plans around the tables and And yeah, just to get a bit of engagement and yeah, absolute Q&A sort of session and
Right.
Give-
I think you'll have a lovely turnout.
good.
No questions, I'll take this to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. 25.16.2 is the Break of Day Council Climate Action. Polly, over to you, mate. So would you like to lead us through this, Polly?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to be bringing some progress and outcomes of the climate change action for council to council today, and in particular this cornerstone report. Following council's workshop, I do apologise again for the condition of the report, the adaptation plan report in the agenda. Try to improve it as best we could, but suffered from problems from the start. We can work with that in the future as well. I think it's important to council to adopt this cornerstone report and be able to get on with implementation through government's community, but also asset management and risk management through council. There's a whole lot of stuff in there that is going to frame the next steps that we will take and continue to work with the Northern Tasmanian Alliance of New Zealand councils and implementation of council's climate action priorities.
Thank you very much for that, Polly. Firstly, can I have somebody endorse the recommendation that's been moved by Councillor Drummond, seconded by Councillor Chapman? Questions to Polly, Councillor Drummond?
Sorry, I just have a question. Are we going to discuss this as part of the workshop next week? I know we're adopting it today, but there's such a lot of content in there. And as we said at the original point, that wasn't readable. I'm just wondering, is there a place at which we can, as councillors, meet and discuss this report in more detail? Because it's quite a comprehensive report. It's quite an important report, and I'd like us all to have a good understanding of it, and that might be through a facilitated workshop or something of that nature. So that was why I was wondering if I can't remember everything that's in that full day of workshops, but to me it's really important that as councillors we really understand this document.
Through Mr Mayor, the workshop's a bit too packed for this. We're already at 6 hours.
I know it's, yeah.
We'll push it out, but certainly in terms of the request for a detailed discussion,
Yeah.
very logical to do that. So we'll schedule something in there.
Thank you.
You will start seeing bits and pieces touched
Flowing
on,
through,
particularly,
yeah.
There'll be asset management presentation next week,
Yeah.
so we'll touch on it there as well.
Yeah.
So you're going to start seeing a live link and more conversations. But I agree, having a detailed discussion around this will be a good thing to do because it's got some significant basic implications.
It has,
So
yeah.
It's important for council to have an understanding of that and that we have the appropriate resources in place to implement
Yeah.
the outcomes and actions.
I mean, I would just like to I would like to talk it through more thoroughly, and I don't think the meeting here today is the place to do that because there is such a lot of content in there. So I would really appreciate if we could have that more detailed workshop. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Drummond.
Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Drummond. And thanks for bringing this to us, Polly, and thanks for the initial conversations that we had at the workshop. I think one of the things for me, and I'm really pleased that we are moving, as you've said about this Keystone report, but one of my one of my concerns is that this be a living document, that when we're implementing, things are going to change. So for me, I've tried to go through it as much as I can, this report, and there are, for me, things that are missing. Now, I'm not sure if I really meant to bring them up here, but I would like to note that one of the things that we could do is, that as a council, is, for example, agree to protect all the future potential production forests as mitigating against climate change.
If I may, Councillor Johnston, I think if you want to bring up a specific item, we need to bring that up, bring it to workshop. It needs to be a special motion.
Oh no, it's not. These are just points that I think that would help with climate change. So, looking at stormwater management. So when we talked about the living, sorry Matt, when we talked about it being a living document, these are the things that I'm hoping that once we pass this, that we can make sure that we are looking at things like, making sure that we're really looking at the, infrastructure and sea level rise, landscape connectivity, all of those things that I know are sort of in here, but they're not sort of, I can see that they're things that have to continue in a living document, basically. So I just want to say, I think it's good, but I think we need to continue to make sure that we are able to add to this plan, Keystone Report, in the implementation. That's all. I don't know if you can answer that.
No worries. Any further comments? If not, I will take this one to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much, Polly.
Thanks, Polly.
35.17.1 is the finished report of the day, the general manager's report.
Quite that substantial, mate. Just a few things in there. I've noted in there that the online consultation regarding the local government meeting the general regulations review, the Minister wrote to us last Wednesday, providing discussion paper, etc. for that. So it's about a 40-page discussion paper which I haven't had the opportunity to wade through yet, but that will be a council workshop item for March and finalisation at the March council meeting. Its responses are due by the 4th of April in relation to that one. So there's some interesting questions raised in there. Just in relation to the Eastern Strategic Regional Partnerships Areas Childcare Needs Analysis. So as noted in there, the results brief has been developed and finalised through with support from the Department of State Growth and Department of Education, Children and Young People, to make sure it's placed in the context of work going within those departments. So it's now been advertised, seeking requests for quotes with a view to, as noted, having the consultant appointed by the 21st of March. Depending on where it comes through in relation to procurement policy, it may or may not be at the council meeting, just depending on delegations as well, and with a view to work being completed by the 30th of June, but we're probably not going to be mature on that one. So that, I'll circulate a copy of the brief to councillors as well, but very much as a part A and part B, which involves the St Mary's project as a bit deeper dive, and then the broader East Coast review as well within that project, to provide enough understanding around the amount of need there is for childcare and after school hours care as well. Happy to take questions on that one, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have somebody move the General Manager's report be received? Councillor Chapel, seconded Councillor Johnston. Any questions to the General Manager on the report, please? Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, John, for your updates. They were very helpful. Just a question, sorry, in regard to the St Helens MTB network meeting with Glenn Jacobs. Could you tell us something further about that?
Through Mr Mayor, Glenn Jacobs is the owner of World Trail, and he was in the state for a few other projects, and he just called in for just a general catch-up, talk about the network and opportunities for them to, and part of it was like literally opportunities for them to promote the network further within the World Trail piece as well, and observations on trends within the sector and how it's continuing to grow, and that certainly there is new product coming online. There's a big network just on the outskirts of Melbourne there as well, but he felt that, good solid growth was still happening in the sector, and we continue to reap the benefits from this growth there as well, and it's how they could help to further enhance our activities.
And there was something later on in the report about Dragon Trail being cancelled into the future, and then so I was just wondering, I was getting quite concerned about the status of the trails and where they were at, and what was actually looking at trail running to come in. I think that's an interesting option. So I was just interested overall on what his observations were in regard to trends, I guess, in the sector. So
certainly the events trail running one is obviously one that's always been there, which is coming through. So, but yeah, he just participation levels, etc. He was just seeing that they're quite stable, growing in participation there as well. So I think obviously with one of the areas that have been affected has been, and it's been through the sort of economic situation. Probably not as much interstate visitation, but intrastate visitation still very solid. But the actual sector that's probably most affected are people not buying new bikes as often. They're actually holding on to them a bit longer, rather than every couple of years they might buy themselves a new bike. So they're just with experience there as well. Certainly the pump track at Trailhead, he agreed that was a vital inclusion to the network, and also just periodically, if there are little opportunities to enhance the network, to take those opportunities. It might be just a little connection maybe between a couple of trails, which changes the experience there as well. So, but yeah, it's still a lot of solid numbers around usage. The thing with Dragon Trail, yes, that event has been shelved at the moment. Whether we see it come back or a different form for come back, it's a bit hard to say as well. But there'll always be different events happening.
Can I ask how we're obtaining the statistics on the usage of the trail? So do you have a counter or what is
Yep, we do have counters on the trail. Got that there, and also yeah, you look at the broader statistics as well in terms of visitors to the state. Other TTAS stats, things in relation to the number of they're actually travelling for this purpose. But yeah, we do have trail counters. We move them around a bit too at times. Yeah.
And is it possible at some point that we as councillors can see that information? I'd just be really interested in knowing the data, because it's a question I get asked a lot from Kerry as to the level of usage on the trail. So if we've got that data, it would be good, I think, for us as councillors to understand more what's going on there. My other part to that was, have we looked at, previously we had those tap and go, which didn't last, seems very long in the community. Is there something in place that we're going to try and start recouping from visitors, some of that out there?
Yeah, certainly the Trail Ambassador program is one of the key pieces about recovery of funds there, as well as we've said in the past, like that piece to do with in fact the public roads. It's a little bit difficult to actually enhance the to recover funds through that process, but the certainly the tap and go thing, I think I was actually Bendigo back and through that product from memory, so we had to take them out because they weren't supporting that product. So we're always looking at opportunities to capture dollars from visitors as well, and directly into the network, but also it's the broader economic benefit which comes from visitation. And I think you only had to drive around during the summer, the number of mainland vehicles with bikes on the back was, and we're not talking about bike cars, we're talking about the driving vehicles you see with bikes on the back, and even now you're still seeing them, and you will continue to see through winter. So part of that conversation with Glenn Jacobs was about how we maximise that visitation during winter as well to assist in that off season, but it's a perfect time to ride the St Helens Trails as well.
Thank you. I think it's really important for us as councillors to be as aware as we can be, because certainly in the community it's a question I get asked. Questions around the mountain bike trails, I do get asked a lot of questions. So thank you very much, John. Thank you.
Councillor Carlin.
My question's largely been asked by Councillor Drummond, but I'm just interested when you look at the visitor centre, for example, you get a very clear impression of how many numbers are going through the centre and also where they're coming from. So I find reading that document every time very helpful in terms of understanding what's happened basically with the demographic over a period of time. I'm just wondering if we can request that data or acquire that data or whatever's required and just build it up so we have a clear understanding of where people are coming, how many people are coming, and over the course of the year. If it's an imposition on council, I'm not necessarily requiring it, but I'm just finding it a really interesting subject to investigate a little bit more thoroughly, which is not a criticism of what's going on.
Yeah, I agree.
So the actual tracking of data in relation to where the people are coming from that are visiting the trails, the only way you can do that is to have someone standing up there to ask the questions. Yes, you drive around the car park and you see the different states on the number plates, but really the only way to capture that data is through that, and I don't think a lot go to the Visitor Information Centre because all the information is website based and through social media, so it's not like going to see if they can find walking trails or whatever. They already know the trails are here when they come here. So that's the situation with that. So there's no easy way to capture that data. The only data that we've captured in the past is in relation to new residents and people buying properties, contact them, and there's been a survey which they've filled in the past, which shows what's influenced purchasing decisions. And anecdotally, you'll also hear that there's a whole raft of people that have moved to the area, including doctors, just purely because of the trail. So to focus purely on numbers doesn't actually tell the bigger picture of the impact it's had on the nature of our community and what it will do moving forward, because some of the people that have been attracted to it for that purpose.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, General Manager, for that information, because you're giving us information that is really helpful to me just in this conversation. So I think it would be helpful for us because this is to have numbers and some of the insights that you've just given us as councillors, so that we have that information, because it is a big, we put a lot into this too. Like we have three staff, is that correct? That maintain the mountain bike trail, so there is, that's employment, I assume, you can count that as employment, from towards or out of having the mountain bike tracks, but it's our people's resource is being put into paying for those people. So I think the more information that we can have, it does help us when we say, it helps generally with what's going on for us as for growth in our tourist industry in Broken-Day to have, one, this conversation, but two, some of the statistical information. So that counter, like the counter thing, I don't really mind where they come from. If they're using it, and that's important for us to know. Yeah.
The counters only give part of the picture.
Yeah.
Right? So because there's only a few counters, so it doesn't show the visitation. The counters as a source of data can't differentiate. So it could be one person that's ridden over 3 different trails and through 3 counters. So I just have to caution that it doesn't give a big indicator of use. It gives an indication of when people are riding, which days are the most popular days to ride. So it gives a really good feel for that sort of use. But in terms of overall numbers and that, even ones like on the blue here, the numbers on that, like there's, you only have certain counters, and as I said, they're not always in the same location. We monitor things, but if you really want to understand it, we've got to invest in a data collection exercise to actually demonstrate that thing, and that's not going to be done within existing resources as well. So, but just anecdotally, these are the things that we do know about as to the benefits, and it will be surprising how many people will be influenced to move here, and the skills that they bring, even the businesses that they're running from home, because of the fact they're attracted here. And as I said, I know of one doctor that was an influencing factor in that move, so other healthcare professionals as well. So,
I 100% agree with what the GM's saying. I guess part of my reasoning behind it is that we all know there is a sector of our community that don't think this is a good idea, that the bikes aren't a big hit like they possibly were. And all I'm suggesting with that data, or whatever form we collect it in, and if it's only as we do now, if we report it and it's in this documentation, it's going to help continue in people's mind, things are happening, that place is alive, there's 100 people went through yesterday, whatever it is. I'm not asking, I don't want us to do more work. I just think sometimes if you put information out there in a public document, it starts to get the negativity out of the picture.
Add a little comment there, and I'm sure Jane or one of them may later on grab some details. because the counters, when we first built them up there pre-COVID, in the thousands, I'm talking thousands, are usually per month. But the interesting part that a lot of people don't consider, on top of the influence of people coming here by choice because of, is also the amount of rates that councils collect. And we use a caravan park, the new one, we usually collect rates on a vacant block of land, and now you're collecting rates on one worth millions. So the actual money being collected in rates on, because of the bike tracks being built, and when that caravan park was built, to be very, very clear, the two owners come to us and said, we're going to build that if we're going to build mountain bike parks, and that went from a vacant block of land to a multi-million-dollar business. So the rates difference just on a business versus a block of land, there's a lot of money coming back in through that park as well, which is offset by being able to maintain the tracks.
Through Mr. Rogers, I mean, people are saying about revenue usage, what are they comparing it to? If they're comparing it to Derby, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
Because Derby's a completely different setup in terms, yes, it's got trails, but the way that the cow and the trails connect, and the nature of the way that slots with the cow stuff, completely different. You can't compare the two to understand what the activity levels are like in that respect. So any additional exercise or any information or data collection is going to come at the cost of staff resources. It's not something we can just press a button on, but we've actually got to go through a process to say, okay, what it is, develop it, capture the data, it's all going to come at the staff resource impact. So that's fine if council is willing to accept that. Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, I'm just reflecting on what John was saying. So you mentioned the new resident survey. So when those come back, do we enter that data somewhere, or do those surveys sit as a
Spreadsheet.
So is there a way of pulling that data out of the spreadsheet in a relatively,
The exec officer may be able to provide some information.
sorry?
The exec
Well, Jane.
officer is going to provide some information.
So we've recently just actually changed the new resident surveys, and now it's actually through Survey Monkey. So when the letter goes out, they actually get a QR code to scan and take the survey. But yes, we were sending them out a hard copy with a reply page envelope, and we have quite a few come back. I think we end up with about got about 1,500 that have come back so far.
You have a lot of information in that.
Yeah, so we have a running tally in a spreadsheet, so when it comes back in, and now we're going to have to work out a way to merge all the data together so we're going to do that quarterly. But I can tell you, for example, one of the questions we ask, and it's a yes or no answer, is did your move to the area, was it influenced by the mountain bike trails? And a quarter of the respondents say yes.
Yeah, that's really good information.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, I don't want it to be resource heavy and onerous on the staff, but if there's data like that we can just pull from existing sheets, surely that's the purpose of them, is to inform.
That's why we take the data, council.
Yeah.
To see the impact.
And I know you do that within the staff, but it's like, I think for us as councillors, that is one of the that is still one of the questions that comes up over and over. So the more informed we can be as councillors, the better to support that network within our community, if you like, and give the appropriate
Could I just
Would
ask?
you, I know I'm pleased I don't put you on the spot, yes or no, but I think we had the data where we had the counters up the trailhead, and if I can remember correctly, I think just in the month of January it was 12,700
That's a
people.
lot.
Yeah, so we...
Booking just one
month, 12,700 people used the trailhead
trailhead alone, and that's without all the other trails.
So we have, because of the nature of the trails, and as John explained, because they're loops, it's hard, and they connect, it's hard to measure just on certain trails. So we have one standing trail counter on the actual trailhead that counts everyone that goes around there. And that really is just a benchmarking one for us. So that's probably going to count someone 3 or 4 times, but we can look at that and then compare it to something else. So yeah, and we also have them on, the top and bottom of the Bay of Fires. We've got one on the multi-user track. We've got one on the town link. We've got one on the on Loyaltier. So that should count everyone who goes down that shuttles up to the trails. But some of the data the intrastate or interstate data, I can send you guys all a link to Tourism Tasmania TVS Analyzer, which is what I use all the time when I'm looking at those stats. And basically it'll tell you, you can click on St Helens and you can look at the mountain biking percentage. And I was just having a little look then. Hang on, let me see if I can pull it up. And it looks like the East Coast had 16,000 travellers specifically travelling to the area for mountain biking. And that's the period ending September 2024. So that's not even our intrastate, that's only interstate. So that's another really good data, and it actually has several activities on it as well that you can look at.
This,
So,
this is
yeah.
the sort of thing where we do hear people against, if you like, or negative to the mountain bike trails, but we also have an amazing amount of people who fully support it. But the economic benefit to our community, business-wise, jobs-wise, without those trails there, they would be now going to the other townships who have got mountain bike trails, and we wouldn't be seeing those type of numbers. They are very, very severe numbers who come here because of our mountain bike trails. That's undeniable.
So Mayor, there are 9 councillors in the room, you're one of them, okay? So you actually have that understanding and knowledge, and the questions that have been asked today are just demonstrating that we don't. Now, I'm not saying we need it, and I don't want any more work out of it, but I think sometimes these are useful for PRs, and certainly as a councillor, when I get that criticism that John alluded to a moment ago, absolutely true. I'm going, well, how do I defend it? Because I don't see it, right? But if I've got some of the data that Jane's referring to, only a brief summary, maybe quarterly, whatever it is, it makes us, our job as councillors, so much easier to inform appropriately what's going on. And then it doesn't come back on the staff to answer my question because somebody asked a question.
No, because that's a fair point. We have, over a long time, at different times, and different councils, all questions have been, keep coming forward.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Joan, for raising that. What you've just given us, that little bit of information, that for me is something that, yes, it'd be great you can send us the link, but it would be also great if we could just get the information. And I think whoever's watching out there, they will have a lot more information about these things. And I think, for me, it's great that the 9 of us know, but gee, it's great for our community to know. Because it is such a big, we're saying that a quarter of people are saying yes, one of the reasons we're coming here is because of them. I'm sure it's not the only, but it's one of the reasons. So that's interesting to know that that is happening within our community. So all I'm saying there is that today we've been able to draw out quite a bit, and some of that, while it's useful for us, it's even more useful for it to be here for us and the broader community.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for taking the time with us all on this issue.
Councillor Peter?
I'm a great fan of the mountain bikes, and I know the value that it's added to the area since their inception. St Helens and it surrounds is nothing like it used to be. But one of the issue that I see is that in the first probably 2 years there was a tremendous amount of publicity. We would even come to council meetings and there was a council staff committee that were looking after mountain bikes. There were major events being held, and all of a sudden it seems like most of that is non-existent. So I just think that there needs to be a refocus with the publicity and a major push, and to get a big event here, to get it back in front of us.
I can say that that's something that I've been working on. So a lot of the things that you've said to me today, I've been sitting in the background thinking, well, that's something I'm already working on, that's something I'm already working on. So there is a lot that goes on in the background that we just haven't reached a point with to come forward yet, but there is quite a bit of stuff going, like even with the Trail Ambassador program and stuff like that, with re-signing people on and re-looking at the program. So there is a lot of work occurring in that space. I suppose the question to ask is how much of that information, what we're doing now, when do we share that with community? And I think that's kind of the space I'm working in at the moment, of when's the most appropriate time to share some of this stuff. But back to what the councillors are wanting information-wise, would it be all right if I just asked you guys to send me maybe the top 3 to 5 questions that you're getting asked? So then that way I can make sure that I'm actually giving you the information you need to answer those questions, and then that way, like obviously some of the data, like I can give you the data, but if there's anything specific as well that you kind of are getting questioned, it would be really handy for me to know so that I can provide you with some key messaging, I suppose, for lack of a better word.
If I may, Jane, too, one of the benefits of the mountain bike trail was being able to be in a position to actually get the funding from the government to put our new footbridge across and connect our walkway. And the rationale in our commitment to that was to get mountain bikers off the road and make it safe for children to be able to walk to school, safe for kids to be able to ride their bike, and without those mountain bike trails to able to leverage, we actually received the funding which built the new aluminium walkway across the water and that connected the walking trails together. So it's many benefits to many, many people, including the incredible amount of people who walk the bay every morning and afternoon as well. So there's many benefits that you can see, and some you take for granted because it's there that you don't see as well. Councillor Chappell.
With that increased activity, hence another reason for the Tasman Highway speed limit to be reduced.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Councillor Drummond.
Can I just say that I think thank you to everyone, because I asked that question, I was very interested in that question, and I think it's generated a really good level of debate, and I think that out of that has come the fact that I think the idea of like the visitor information report that we get with the bare numbers, even that's very helpful. And when you talk about what are the three questions, I mean, off the top of my head, it's how many people use it, how much does it cost council to keep them running, and are these local people or are they visitors? Those are things I hear all the time. I can say those just right now because that's what I get asked frequently. And so that basic data that we've just got is actually really, I can now go away and say to people, in 2024 there were 16,000 interstate visitors who used the mount. That's great knowledge for us. It's one of those things that assist us to promote and inform the community. So thank you everybody. It's been thanks, Jane. But those are the three questions I get asked all the time. For other councils, it might be different, but off the top of my head, that's it.
That's it. They're similar. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, if everybody's happy, I'm going to take that to the vote. All in favour?
Carried unanimous.
Thank you, John.
17.2 is the annual planning quarterly update. John, have you got anything left to add?
He looks a bit brain dead now.
Just Mr Mayor, the sort of sitting just under the 50% mark. Most of the variation is around timing of activities, where some are front end loaded in the year and some are back end loaded in the year. There are a couple there around resources as well, and where one of them say in relation to housing, but then also you've got sort of partnerships with how we direct. And so, in summary, Mr Mayor, that's where things are at. Happy to ask questions, take questions and respond to particular items that council may have.
Can I have somebody move the officers' report ready to Councillor Johnson, second. Councillor Chappell. Any questions to the General Manager on that report? Councillor Drummond.
Just a comment, I actually think most of my questions that I had have actually been answered in the conversation that we've had on other points today. So thank everybody for the level of information that you're providing for the council officers today. It's been really good, thank you. Thanks. But they have been answered, so.
Any further questions? If not, I'll take it to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous. 25.7.3 is the Eastern Strategic Regional Partnership Study Hub. John, would you like to look over this one? This is pretty impressive.
Where is it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I just provide a bit of background in the report there around how this came about. So it does get back to the Strategic Regional Partnership and the funding that was provided through the Fingal Vogel House for that investigation in relation to the nature extent of need. This is through that, through the consultancy process, there was a project oversight group, which worked with that. We had to nominate a board in the application, so they were nominated as the board with a couple of other additions there. There will be a separate legal entity established to receive the funding, so given the scale that's going on with some of those things, that will happen there, and we'll be looking at how the connection might be strengthened between the regional jobs hub and the study hub, because there's a lot of synergies in there between the two, and the pathways going backwards and forwards on that. Study hub will be affiliated with Tampere University Centres as well, and we know the CUC Eastern Tasmania, which covers Walsbury Road, Breaker Bay, and its entirety. And the beauty about that affiliation just brings a lot of support in terms of establishment and operation of centres moving forward there as well, plus access to very powerful lobbying activity. Obviously, we focus on tertiary vocational education, but we're also seeing that, apart from being all ages, that we expect with the Part B of the report, that the piece of that school age coming through there'll be quite a strong piece which will be a little bit unique to this particular study hub piece there as well, but certainly big focus on enabling students to study locally with university of their choice, but get the support necessary to enable them to do that, because so much is delivered online, and sort of Open Universities Australia, I think it's all the focus on that's just increasing. Obviously, council participation support, strengthen the position of the study hub application as well, and they'll form a number of partnerships with other key stakeholders. The funding is for 3 years initially, but this is effectively recurrent funding. So centres that were established, the early ones which were established back in the early 2000s, they're still being funded. So effectively, this is not like a trial program, this is actually a piece of infrastructure which is ongoing as well. So once you're in, that's pretty important there as well. The other piece to note here is RDA Tasmania is just providing some implementation support for the project oversight group as part of their support to the Strategic Regional Partnership process, which just helps to get things moving along. Included a copy of the initial strategic plan in there, which provides a bit of a snapshot of the focus.
Question, just because you're at a certain point in the conversation. I obviously have been invited to a couple of meetings in just recent times, and I'm extremely impressed with the quality and enthusiasm of the sorts of people you're describing in these advisory groups. I'm just wondering, it would be helpful if the other councillors understood the broad conversations that these committees are having and some of the participants in it. I just think that would help them understand what's going on here. I'm not talking about our local community, I'm just talking about the quality of the humans that are engaging in the processes getting you to this point. Is that not helpful? I'm sorry if it isn't.
I'm just sort of trying to think that just who's on that particular moment.
Well, I'm talking in a broader... I'll start it and you can give you time to think. But basically, I got invited to a couple of meetings in recent times, and it's blown me away, first of all, the dedication that these people are providing to the conversation. They're not all locals. There was a guy from State Growth there. He was extremely impressive. So the participation from all stakeholders across an education spectrum of Tasmania, rather than just Breaker Day, is I think it's refreshing to have that broad thinking. People from university, professors are involved in it. There's just a whole lot of people who are working on behalf of Breaker Day with a lot of enthusiasm and dedication, and that's why we've got to this stage. I don't think it was an easy job for these guys to win the grant that they've got, or the 3 years of opportunity that we've got. What an amazing experience and capacity for our community to piggyback on. But I just want you to know there's some amazing people behind it. Not many faces. In fact, I think there's only one face in the room that I know. So there's lots of high quality people doing the job. hopefully that will answer my question to the satisfaction of not having to be specific about it, John.
I mean, it started some time ago, didn't it, John? You know, that whole, because I was on that original group that started looking at this, and then it kind of developed and grew, you know, quite dramatically. But I think, give thanks to those people who had the original kind of impetus to get the group moving and to discuss what need there was in the area. So it's a fantastic project.
It's probably, it started off, there was a few conversations initially, and then it sort of all went very quiet, and then it was like, and it must have been a very informal group because I wasn't aware that there was actually a formal group there, but I know a few people were having conversations because a little bit happened through Bodec as well. But there was like, yeah, a couple had conversations there on that. So then the main opportunity came through the SRP when we managed to get some funding in there for that research piece of work. There's always been conversations going on in different ways. Certainly UTAS have had a whole range of projects here locally as well, strongly invested in this community. Andrew McGregor through Tas Community Fund, when he was on that board, the focus on the 8 till 25-year-olds, I think, in the education connection space there as well. So TCF have had this ongoing focus there as well. So there's been a lot of conversations going on, and it was just fortunate. Time was right, literally, to get the funding and to get the investigation done and to align that with grant funding opportunity, which we knew was coming. But certainly you've got connection on there from UTAS, you've got connection on there from within community, you've got connection on there from RDA TAS, Glamorgan Spring Bay Council, education. Yeah, it's been a group there to start with, but then what looks like moving forward is going to look like different. It's going to look different there as well. So there'll be a process there where I think we'll see membership and directors evolve as to who's taking the running.
I think it's important.
And even as Councillor Carter mentioned, the involvement of state through Jobs TAS and Department of State Growth has been pretty vital to some of the broader connection stuff we're going to see. So I think it's going to set up the East Coast very well in this space.
I think it's important to note that we were so lucky. It fortuitous, really, the SRP come along at the right time, and the state government with that compiled, and we're the only one in Tasmania who was successful in this. It's a really, really awesome opportunity for the East Coast.
I was just going to say that it evidences what we talk about often in this space, that if we've got projects being worked on in the background to a point where there's something to present, that when that then funding opportunity becomes available, we use the term shovel ready very often. Don't think shovels are anything to do with this education program really, but you know what I'm saying? It was like there was a body of work that had been done, and then when the funding became available, it was an ability to go forward with it, and very, very well resourced, I guess. So, yeah.
Also, as part of this, I know it's just something, a small part that we're doing. However, I knew initially, I knew a tiny little bit about it, and then to hear in the paper was great. However, there were all questions from lots of people which I had no answers to. So I felt like I had no idea, so unless you've been included or in initial discussions or whatever, it may be that we need to formulate something as a council, because there are lots of questions. People are wanting to know lots of different things, and then we've just had a press release and funding announcement, and people are assuming council's got a lot to do with it, and no answers to be able to give people. So I'm actually finding that quite awkward at the moment. So I don't know about anybody else. I mean, those that are in the working groups or whatever, that's fine. But for those of us, it was just like, bang, oh, this is fantastic. What do you know about it? I actually know nothing. So.
The other thing for that, on the flip side, if the application had been unsuccessful.
I get that.
Okay.
However, also phone calls from the ABC, what do you know about it? And I know nothing, so, which I handballed to someone who did.
I think going forward, the relationship the study hub has with the school is going to be vitally important. And I think back to my time in education when every school just about had grade 11 and 12. One of the major problems there is having specialist staff coming in to take those subjects. So if you're doing a uni course, let's say in mathematics, there's probably a very little chance that one of those two people that are going to be employed by the study hub will be a maths specialist. So if a deal can be done with the school, say 4 days at school and 1 day at the study hub, so you know if you're working remotely which days to come in. So what I'm saying is very important to have a good relationship with the school and having people with the knowledge going backwards and forwards.
I'm actually really excited by this, and I really appreciate the work that's been done. And I think that's about all I want to say, except that I would like to be interested. No, I really am very, I mean, this is something that for our region, I mean, I do see how big the East Coast is, but where it takes in. So I'm not sure with the study hub where I see that it's with the Fingal Valley House, but and I'm just wondering where it might locate itself, because it's not going to be up there in the cloud, is it? There will be actually a physical space. So that the East Coast is quite a large area. For me, this is one of the things as a region that we don't have, which is, you know, sort of post-secondary, and, you know, this study hub is something that we can hang our hats on as far as education, and I'm really thrilled that the council has good involvement in this. Very simply great, and I look forward to finding out where the study hub's going to be.
Mr Mayor, what obviously starts off with the initial hub in St Helens and it expands into Fingal Valley down the coast. We'll always have locations. Schools around, people being able to go to physical location. Not up there, it's already up there.
Yeah, that's right.
In Youth. So it's about physical locations,
Yeah, right.
a string of locations that people can access.
So
Based around level of land and availability of properties and things like that. So there'll be one core staff, and then it doesn't preclude if there's a further expansion down the track from applying for additional funding to expand services like building. So it's just because you're funding once doesn't mean you can't get additional funding down the track.
Thank you. Sorry, can I just say one more thing? It feels like there's opportunities for us to have really good relations with other local governments as well when I look at the size of that. And, you know, we've got Bicheno in there, and then, you know, it goes right down to Nellie Hobart. So it feels like a really great project.
It's absolutely amazing and significant for our community. But if everybody's
Happy? I'm conscious of the time. We will take this to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimous, thank you. And I'm going to say goodbye to our resident.
We didn't have a mover and seconder.
Yes, we did.
No, we didn't.
I did call for it before we opened it up.
We didn't.
And it was...
Just take it.
Well, Christie... Okay, we'll go again anyway.
Councillor Johnson and Secretary Councillor Johnson. I did have